Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Be Well, Be Keto. And today's special guest is Dr. David Harper, who is a health educator, professor, and cancer researcher. His new book, BioDiet, the scientifically proven ketogenic way to lose weight and improve health, is available right now. And it's an awesome book. My husband is loving it. It offers a new scientifically validated approach, a low carbohydrate, high fat ketogenic plan that works with the body's natural processes to improve health and reverse decades of damage caused by our collective carbohydrate addiction. So let's go say hi to Dave.
Welcome to the Be Well, Be Keto podcast, where we showcase ordinary people who have achieved extraordinary results. Your host is the high energy girl, health coach, and personal trainer, Tracy Gluhite.
Create whole body wellness, a powerful new advancement in energy medicine. Increase your energy, empower your life. I am super excited to announce that I am now a Bioenergetics practitioner. And many people are like, well, what is bioenergetics? So imagine that our body is controlled by our energy field, and these fields get distortions and blockages, which create physical and emotional symptoms. So how do we get energy blockages? From stress, toxins, EMFs, emotional traumas, physical scars, and physical traumas. All you need to do is decode the human body field to get to the root cause and restore your energy for life. For more information, head on over to the blog at highenergygirl.com/bioenergetics with an X. That's BIOENERGETIX, and heal your energy for life. Have you joined the Facebook group yet? I have a new Facebook group called High Energy Girls, and that is pretty much where I'm hanging out these days, and I would love to have you a part of the group. So head on over to High Energy Girls on Facebook. Hey Dave, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for inviting me, Tracy. It's great to be here this morning.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to hear from you because I know that you've done a lot of interesting things in the last while, and I'm excited to hear from you because I know that you're an expert in the keto diet.
Thank you. I like to think of myself as a latecomer compared to some other folks, but yeah, I've really embraced the whole ketogenic lifestyle personally and also professionally.
So talk to me a little bit about your experience with that, Dave. So how did you come to keto? Well, actually, first, let's go back. Let's tell the listeners a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, I'm a university professor, a professor of kinesiology at the University of the Fraser Valley, and I do my research at the British Columbia Cancer Research Center Terry Fox Lab, which is one of the world's leading cancer research centers here in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I'm also involved with some clinical trials, one of which is in collaboration with some colleagues at Ohio State University, Jeff Volek and his team there, and recently, of course, author of our latest book, BioDiet.
Oh, awesome! So you're not busy at all.
I wear a lot of hats. You know, I think I've listened to a lot of episodes in your show, and I think that's a common theme is everybody's very busy, but I felt this was really, really important. I felt getting the right information out to the public in a manner that was engaging and accessible was really, really important at this point in time, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, in cyberspace and in the public about ketogenic diets, and I think people need to be made aware of how potentially beneficial they can really be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. Like, I hate when people say, oh, it's just the latest fad, you know?
Yeah, that drives me crazy. It is not a fad diet. It is I would argue it is a traditional human diet. If you look at our ancestral history, we managed to live for more than 99% of our existence as humans without any appreciable carbohydrate in our diet. So when people say that it's a fad diet, or even more, it's when they say it's not sustainable, I say, well, how do you think we got here? We got here without pizza and panini, so we must have been well adapted to a ketogenic diet in the first place, and I think that's why so many of your guests and your listeners, I'm sure, have appreciated that when they adopt a ketogenic diet after a period of transition period of adaptation, they just start feeling great because it's what's right for humans.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's funny because I am old. Well, I'm not going to say I'm old, but I'm 53, and I go to the gym fasted, which I've been told that I should have some protein before I go, but whatever. I just don't like the way it feels in my body. But I'm getting stronger and I'm hitting PRs. Yesterday, I crushed it with the PRs in the gym. And, I go in fasted and totally keto, yet I'm still getting stronger and more fit and more healthy. So, I just tell them whatever. So, Dave, how did you find keto?
That's an interesting story. I was doing a radio show here in Vancouver, the equivalent of NPR in the United States, and we had a show called Think for Yourself, which was about critical reasoning and healthy skepticism. And we had a guest on, Dr. Richard Mathias from the University of British Columbia School of Public Health. And we were going to be debating what's the better way to lose weight? Is it better to lose weight in the gym or in the kitchen? So exercise or diet. And I was taking the exercise side as a professor of kinesiology, and so we started and started the conversation. And Dr. Mathias said, "Well, what do you think is the cause of obesity?" And I at that time was kind of toting what I like to call the party line, the conventional wisdom, which is that it's a very complex, multifactorial disease state that has psychosocial factors and so on and so forth. And of course, all of that is true. And he very patiently listened to me and then stopped at the end and said, "Dave, for most people, it's not that at all. It's just an adaptation to excessive carbohydrate in the diet." And you have to understand that at this point, I had been teaching anatomy and physiology and pathology for more than 30 years. I'm 59, by the way. And I've seen pictures of you, only we haven't met in person, but you certainly don't look 53, and I bet you get that all the time. And that's one of the nice things about a keto diet is it does have a rejuvenating effect on people, and you get lots of compliments, which is great. Well,
thank you.
So when Dr. Mathias said that, when he said it's an adaptation to excessive carbohydrate in the diet, it stunned me. I stopped. I was on radio we call it dead air. I just couldn't say anything, and because what was happening in my brain was I was realizing all of those years of my understanding of anatomy and physiology came to a sort of nexus point. I thought, of course, that's what it is. It's just that simple. And then I thought about the diet we've been recommending for the last 40 years and the increase in rates of overweight and obesity, and then the associated chronic disease with that, which is cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and even Alzheimer's. And it was really it was an aha moment for me. So then I spent a couple of years. First of all, I had to admit I was wrong, and I'd been teaching the wrong thing for 30 odd years to my students, and I owe an apology to all of them, because when I researched the fundamental basis of the standard Western diet or traditional American diet, which is a high carbohydrate, very low fat diet, that's what's still recommended, I realized there's no robust scientific evidence to support that. It really came out of an idea of Ansel Keys in the 50s and 60s that saturated fat was the root cause of cardiovascular disease, and they spent in adjusted dollars over $2 billion over 30 years trying to prove that, and never could. And in fact, if you look, there is no substantial basis for that diet. There is no added risk to cardiovascular disease from the saturated fat. In fact, if you look, you'll see it's sugar, it's highly processed foods, and especially high glycemic index carbohydrates, light sugar, and starch that's at the root of chronic disease. And that's sort of the start of the story. And I just thought, well, people need to hear this. So I started doing my own research on mostly postmenopausal women, looking at weight loss and exercise and so on. And the answer, by the way, is that the phrase we like to use is you lose weight in the kitchen, but you get fit in the gym. So I encourage people to do both. But trying to exercise your way out of overweight doesn't work very effectively. It's much better to adjust your diet. And so we did a number of studies over the years, and then I started working at the Cancer Agency, looking at other aspects of chronic disease, in particular cancer and the mechanisms there. I teamed up there with Dr. Gerald Crystal, who's one of the world's leading experts in a immune system and how the immune system works with cancer. And again, we have an understanding that a low carbohydrate or ketogenic diet is very beneficial in preventing cancer, we think, and perhaps even treating it. And that's the research we're doing now with Dr. Volek's work at Ohio State University, working with women with metastatic breast cancer.
Wow. How long have you been doing that study?
That study is sort of in the mid. It's a 3-year study, and we are about 1.5 years into it. I can't really talk about the results at this point. It would be premature, except to say that they're very encouraging. It's really hard to recruit women to these studies because the women that are enrolled in the studies are ones that the medical system has no more solutions for them other than a standard of care maintenance drug therapy like Xeloda. So so the women, they need to have a life expectancy of 1 year or so. So these are very sick women. And that's what happens with these sorts of clinical trials is you kind of, the only patients you can recruit are those that the system has given up on. And but the initial, and we're doing, this is a very, very sophisticated study. We can talk about that all day. But the initial results, 6 weeks in, are some of them are really quite remarkable. And actually, we're getting very consistent results with all of the patients we've enrolled so far. But it's very difficult to enroll patients. So this is in the Columbus, Ohio region. So if you have any listeners out there that know somebody that is being treated for breast cancer, they could get in touch with Dr. Volek's lab. That would be great.
Oh, cool. Okay, so let's go back again to you kind of got blindsided and had to rethink things and rethink, everything that you've believed for all these years. What did you do next?
Well, the next thing I did, I decided that a book needed to be written. So I did take some time and wrote a book that I didn't like. And the reason I didn't like it was that it was just my thoughts on the page, and it wasn't accessible to the general public. It would have been great for other keto researchers, but I really felt the word needed to get out to the general public. So I realized I had to become an advocate for ketogenic diets as a healthy lifestyle, but also as a potential therapeutic for most chronic disease. And so I wrote a book, and then it sat there, and I did more research because as I did more research, I learned more, and after about 5 or 6 years, I finally said, okay, I have to write. You've written a book, so you know how challenging it can be. I have to write this darn thing. So I basically gave up everything. I spent the last year with my wife, Dale Drury, writing the book, and we gave up. We worked every day, even including Christmas, and back and forth with the publishers, and finally got the book finished, and it's out now, and it's available, online anywhere. And you actually, if you want to go and have a look at it, there's a lot of preview information on our website, biodiet.org. And we have some resources there too, some of the figures and appendices and shout out quotes and that sort of thing that I encourage people to go and have a look at and use, please, if you're doing presentations or whatever. There's some good stuff there. So now by default, I've turned into an advocate for ketogenic diets, and I'm working with people like Nina Teicholz, who I'm sure you know of, who wrote Big Fat Lie. And she runs the Nutrition Coalition in the United States. And we're doing a similar thing with the Canadian Clinicians for Therapeutic Nutrition in Canada to try and change public policy to have low carbohydrate and especially ketogenic diets accepted as a healthy lifestyle and also a potential therapeutic for a chronic disease. Oh,
that's very cool. But you skipped a bunch of steps. So you're on the radio and you're talking to this professor or doctor, and he's telling you that everything starts in the kitchen. And then did you try it, or did you just start writing a book about it?
Well, on a personal level, no, actually, that's a very good question. Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, I didn't just jump to writing the book. I did all the research then on ketogenic diets that I could find, and there's some very good stuff and some kind of iffy stuff. And what I realized was really missing was that personal perspective. So I decided the first thing I should do before I start recommending this to anybody else is set something up for myself. So I designed a diet for myself, and then we adapted that for the trials we did at the University of the Fraser Valley, and I learned a lot from that. So I'm a design thinker, Tracy. I think you know what that's about. So I think of the end user, which is the person that's on the receiving end, rather than being very prescriptive and scientific, and you must do this and this and this because science says that and that and that. I wanted to really experience it. So my wife and I adopted a ketogenic diet about seven and a half years ago now. And we found, anybody who's listened to your show would know all the amazing changes that happen, all these positive things, and that actually reinforced our ability to sustain the diet. And so we've been very happily ketogenic for 7 years in perfect health, take no drugs, and haven't gained a pound back, and have any of these notions that there's some long-term risks. I'm very happy to chat with them, show them all my blood work, and the fact that things just keep improving year over year over year. And now it's time, as I say, to get the good news out to the general public.
So give me some juicy details about that, Dave. So where were you before you started, physically, mentally, all of that? And then how did you implement it exactly? How did you design yours specifically? I know you kind of customized things a little bit. And then what were your end results physically and mentally?
Well, yeah, the story starts. It's kind of a funny start to it. I was actually, I was sort of, I guess, 50-ish, and I was at a conference at a resort, and I was in the gym, and I was having a shower after, and I was by myself, but I was in one of those rooms you've probably seen with the mirrors all around, and I was just kind of, getting dried off and that sort of thing, and then I spotted this other guy there. But only from, sort of the side and behind. And I thought, oh, that's kind of like he's got the love handles there. And then I realized it was me, that I was seeing myself in the mirror. And I thought, because it's kind of like the lobster in the pot story. You start putting on weight, little bit, and you don't necessarily notice. And then I just realized that, having not seen myself in profile or from behind in some time, that I didn't like what I saw. And I just thought, well, is this just a natural part of the aging process that we just put on this mid-abdominal fat, the spare tire, so to speak, or is it something that we can actually address? And so these things coincided. And so I was, by the way, I was never overweight. I pushed up against, I'm about 5'9", 10, and right now I weigh about 150 pounds. I was closer to 180 pounds, so I was never on the BMI scale overweight, but pushing up against it. But I was unhappy. I was starting to, the sort of man boobs things, those are starting to show up. And this, by the way, I was working out in the gym. I was very fit. I was climbing mountains, but just putting on this weight, and I didn't understand why. And the reason was that, well, I like beer, and I had a high carb, low fat diet. And so the turnaround when I adopted the ketogenic diet was just remarkable. Like in the first, well, we ask people to stick with it for about 3 months so that they can develop healthy habits. And in that 3 months for me, I dropped about 27 pounds. I did a DEXA test. I think you've talked about that on your show. So that's a kind of a low radiation scan that is often used for bone density for women, but it also tells you your body fat. So I know that those 27 pounds were body fat, and they were from my midsection, which is where it was. And all this was just super exciting because not only was I losing weight, but I was feeling great, tons of energy, and all those foods that I thought that I would miss because I'm half Italian, and the pasta and the bread and all that, all those foods that I thought I would miss, I wasn't missing them because I was eating all this great fat, and I'm a big fan of dairy and grass-fed butter, and olive oil and avocados, and so all that. Those foods that I was eating so little of because they were high-fat foods, I was now really enjoying, and it turned out I wasn't missing any of that other stuff. Sugar is another story, too. I'd never really had a bit of a sweet tooth, but I was a bit of a cookie monster, I would say. So that really helped me, too, the ability to lose that craving for something sweet all the time that we've run into. I mean, the diet that Americans actually eat has so much sugar in it. It's about probably 25% of the calories are from sucrose. And so getting that out of your diet is just so helpful in terms of your health. So that was kind of the start of the process, and then working with other people to help them get healthier. And the results from these trials I did, even on my own campus, were great because I really encourage people to have physician oversight when they adopt these diets, and that's one of the things I emphasize in BioDiet is that you need to work with your physician to do this in a healthy and safe manner. Ketogenic diets are not for everybody. There are some contraindications, and not everybody should be adopting this. So please don't just go to the internet and find a local. Find somebody who's prescribing a ketogenic diet. Talk to your physician first and get some measurements done at the beginning so that you'll know if the changes are right for you. So in these clinical trials, I was helping people, and they were, I'd get these calls from these physicians, and I would be going, oh no, there's been an adverse event, somebody's having a problem, and the physician go, what did you do with my patient? And I would say, well, I put them on a ketogenic diet, and and they would go, it's remarkable, like they're not taking their diabetes medication anymore. They've lost like 20 or 30 pounds, and I was just going, this is fantastic, and when you hear that consistently over and over and over again, you just realize this is something really important. It's bigger than just, like you say, a fad diet. This is a lifestyle change that has the potential to fundamentally change people's lives for the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agreed. So besides the weight loss, what did you and also your wife, like what did you guys experience?
You mean in terms of the side effects or the positive benefits, or just?
Yeah, like all the good juicy details.
Okay. Well, we did jump into it straight away. We just thought that that the best way to do it, and that was the only prescribed way to do it at the time, and still with most practitioners, is just, you get people in, you cut out the carbs straight away. So we did that, and it was a bit of a challenge at first. You give up your beer and you give up your cookies. And then after a couple of days, I really got hit by the keto flu. Pretty hard, so much so that, I remember lying in bed one day, just kind of going, this is like, I just feel awful. This is not worth it. I'm gonna get, but then, I thought, well, it's like anything else. I go, well, I'll do it one more day and then see what happens. And so for me, it was great. That keto flu period, which can last from a few days to a few weeks for some people, it is unpleasant. But I woke up a couple of days later, and I just felt fantastic. I felt like my brain was clear. I was full of energy. And what's happening physiologically at that time, which I kind of discuss in lay terms in the book, is your body's now turned on all these genes to help you adapt to these ketones and not view them as a waste that needs to be ridded from your system, but as a fantastic fuel for your brain and body. And I just felt great. And so, I've counseled lots of friends and colleagues and that sort of thing. They've jokingly called this the Harper high now, which is something that happens for probably about half of people. They'll suddenly just feel like they feel great. One woman I recall, she was saying, Dave, she walked into my office, because again, these studies were done at my university. She walked into my office. She said, I just have to thank you so much. And I said, why? What's going on? She said, I just woke up today and it's like somebody pulled cotton wool out of my brain that's been there for 10 years. And so many people, we've called the brain fog or whatnot, but so many people get that sudden switch, which is really, really amazing. So that's kind of my experience. Now, once you adapt, then it's about changing your habits, because you're going to be eating different foods. So, this is all discussed pretty much in the book, where I talk about how to clean all the food you don't want out of your kitchen and how to get the right foods in there. You do have to spend a lot more time thinking about food. And I think this is really, really important, Tracy, is that people are much more mindful about food. I think most people just get hungry and they go and eat something that tastes good, and that fills them up for a little while. And that's a bad way to go about it. You just need to spend a little bit of time thinking about the food you're going to eat, buying fresh food, buying real food, and learning how to prepare food too. I think it's great. There's lots of great ketogenic cookbooks out there. They're simple and easy. And so we adapted all of those lifestyle changes and habit changes. And by the end of the 12 weeks, that's in BioDiet, I call that biocontinuation, which is you make a choice about what you want to do going forward. I hope most people will stay with a low carb keto lifestyle. And it was just a no-brainer for us, because we just felt great. We lost weight. We looked great. Everybody told us we looked younger and healthier. And, what did you do? So that reaffirmation of that decision was very important going forward. And we've had virtually no problem staying with it. I was just actually down in the United States. We're in Bend, Oregon, and staying with it when you're traveling is a bit challenging. I think that's something I'm sure a lot of your listeners would appreciate, is when you go to another town, trying to find somewhere that's got some, go out for dinner and try and find, how many salads with, shrimp on it can you have? I really hope we can develop some sort of chain of keto-friendly restaurants that people can go to.
Yeah, see, I don't have that problem, because everywhere I go, Well, when I go out to eat, I usually just get salmon or steak and whatever their veggie of the day is.
Yep, that's what I do too. And it's fine, but there are many other options. Like I say, there's some great. Leanne Vogel has a great book, and Maria Emmerich too. Maria and Craig Emmerich have a couple of great books that tell you how to make it. But it's when you're going out. Have you ever experienced this one, Tracy, where you go, well, I'm keto or I'm a ketogenic, and they go, oh yeah, and then they'll find something. Well, that's gluten free.
Yeah.
And for some reason, this confusion between gluten free and because gluten free could be ketogenic, but it's more likely going to be very high glycemic index stuff because when they substitute for the gluten products, they often put in rice flour and tapioca starch and so on. So that's what I mean by a bit of a challenge when you're going out to a restaurant. But yeah, you know what? I'll work around it. And if I'm going for someone's place for dinner, I just say, listen, if it's pasta or whatever, probably won't eat that. But if it's anything else, we'll just pick around whatever we don't want to eat. It's not a big problem.
I had to go to an event for my job because I have a day job. And I told them it was a training. It was in Minnesota. And I said, I do not eat gluten. Like I do have a gluten sensitivity. And he's like, well, what do you eat? I said, mostly just vegetables and meat. So the first day for lunch, no joke, it's Chipotle Burritos.
I know. This is, I did.
I'm like, are you freaking kidding?
Yeah. Here's another one. So this is a great one. I was flying. I can't remember where. And you know how when you book a flight, you can pick if you have a special dietary, need. So I was just looking at that, and this is another thing. And we need low carb and keto on those choices. And so I ticked off diabetic, right? Because I figured, diabetic, that'll be, that won't have. And it was basically it was macaroni and cheese with a bread roll. It was rice or something like that. And it was some super low fat thing that obviously, the total misunderstanding of what causes diabetes. But I just thought that was pretty funny. I just didn't eat any of it. I just laughed. I said, this is a diabetic thing. I said, that's gonna, you better serve it with metformin because people are gonna need that right after. So.
Yeah, and they just don't get it. It drives me insane. Like I actually I was so pissed that I took 2 of the burritos, and I opened them up and I just ate the meat out of them and then threw the rest of the crap away.
Yeah, that's what I do. Because I go to a lot of conferences and things, when they have the meals. What I do is I just carry some nuts around with me, right? If I'm not going to be fed, you can get a lot of good, wholesome energy out of the nuts. But I'll pick the sandwiches. It drives them crazy. I'll just take the buns and leave them and take the meat out and the lettuce or whatever and tomatoes. And but things will change, Tracy. I think we're riding the crest of a wave right now. People are starting to realize that the science that underpins ketogenic diets is very, very robust and powerful, and all of these, great stories that are coming out of people that are just fundamentally changing their lives for the better, getting off drugs, not needing surgeries. That will eventually work its way into the general public. Do you remember back, Tracy, back to the Atkins days? And Atkins, he didn't really understand how it worked, and I think if people do understand how it works, which is one of the reasons I wrote the book, they're more likely to stick with it. But in the Atkins day, do you remember McDonald's actually came out with like an Atkins burger that had like the burger on one side and like some lettuce and stuff, and there was no bun or no French fries. It didn't last very long, but that I think eventually people are going to come around. How about in San Francisco? I'm starting to see around here the word keto showing up on the storefronts of restaurants and so on. Paleo restaurants, but they'll say keto friendly and so on. Are you seeing that in the Bay Area as well?
Not at restaurants as much, but I've seen it like at Trader Joe's, and it says, "Oh, this is keto friendly," and things like that. And it was funny because a reporter from The Thrillist contacted me, and I wrote an article with him for good things to get at Trader Joe's. But I mean, like I said, Dave, my huge thing is I just mostly, I would say 95% of what I eat is just meat and vegetables, like big fatty salads. And, I don't like he wanted frozen things and things in the refrigerator, like ready to eat food. But when I was really looking at all those ingredients, because quite frankly, I don't usually buy that stuff. But when I was looking at the ingredients, like you said earlier, they put in the tapioca starches and, all these other chemicals and different things that I don't want to eat anyhow,
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think what they're doing with a lot of these keto products is a mistake, and I think it's, again, if you understand design thinking, you understand the end user. So people that are end users of that are keto adapted, they don't want to have a bunch of sweet stuff. They don't want substitutes for their cookies and ice cream. They've stopped eating that. And what they want is just products that they can kind of grab and go, that are healthy, fresh foods that are ketogenically friendly. But what I'm seeing are a lot of bars, a lot of candy bars, and I call them candy bars because they're super sweet. They use other sweeteners that like sucralose that are just so sweet. And I don't think they realize that people that are keto adapted are really sensitive to sweet, right? So I don't know about you, but when I taste those things, they're cloyingly sweet. I can't eat them.
Well,
And
I think there's a huge demand for sweet stuff. I mean, I have probably, I don't know, 20 keto cookbooks, but when I look, because I'm in all kinds of different women's keto groups on Facebook, and they love the sweet treats. They love the desserts and, all of that. But I think it's a woman, I mean, I just think it's a girl thing, that girls just like sweet stuff more than guys regularly. But I see a lot of that. But I think that we need, as a culture, to change our palate.
yeah, oh, you are so right, Tracy. I can't agree more. And in fact, the science supports what you're saying. Is even if you eat sweet things that aren't sweetened with sucrose, which is table sugar, you're still stimulating some of the receptors in their brain that result in the negative consequences of that high sugar diet. And I think people want the change to be as easy as possible. I really think there's a lot of people out there that are hoping that some pharmaceutical company comes up with a pill that allows them to eat the crappy food they're eating and not get fat and sick. And, good luck with that. I don't think that's ever going to come. So when you change your palate, and I eat kind of what you do, vegetables and meat for the most part, and a lot of dairy. I do eat a lot of dairy. But for most people, that you have to realize that reliance on sweet foods as a major proportion of your calories, whether it's sweetened with sugar or not, is not a good thing for you. And the great thing about a ketogenic diet, like the bio diet, is you can wean yourself off of that need. And that's why I think, Tracy, I agree with you that all of these artificially sweetened keto products are actually creating a second problem. We're shifting people from sucrose sweetened foods to other sweetened foods that may have higher fat, but they're not necessarily good for you. And there's lots of other stuff in there that might create some problems down the road. So, what I do if I want something sweet and I'm not kidding. My wife and I will buy an apple and we'll share it for a week.
Oh my gosh.
So, and it would just, well, if you need, you have a nice dinner or something like that. Let's say it's a savory or a spicy dinner, and sometimes you just crave that little bit of sweet. Just a little slice of a Honey Crisp apple. There's a little bit of sucrose in there, but you'll metabolize that easily. It's not going to knock you out of ketosis. But that's so satisfying. It just satisfies that sweet. And then follow that up with something like, a peppermint tea or something that doesn't have sugar in it, but has kind of that flavor. And I think those are much healthier choices than trying to substitute artificially sweetened desserts for the things we have. By the way, I have some friends that we were just discussing that I've canceled. And they said the problem with them is Coke and pizza for guys, right? They're saying, yeah, I'm fine at home. Then I go away on vacation and I have Coke and a pizza, and then it just breaks the camel's back. So I really do think it's important for people to wean themselves off of that need for sweet. And if they do, they're going to be much healthier and they're going to be much more successful. And when you substitute the high fat, that satisfying high fat for the sweet, you'll realize that you don't need as much or any down the road. But it takes a little while. It takes a few weeks to do that adaptation.
So let's talk about this. So I do like sweet things, but I also know that I can overeat them. They can be triggering for me. So that's one of the reasons I try to avoid it. Okay. So you just mentioned sucralose. So I used to love like all the drinks that, the things with sucralose in them, but I have not had sucralose in at least, I don't know, maybe 3 years. And it's because of the gut damaging effects of sucralose.
Yeah, I haven't studied sucralose from that perspective, but I don't like it. I don't like the taste of it, and it's basically a glucose molecule where they've substituted a methyl group for a hydrogen group, and I just don't. I think if you're going to use a sweetener, find something that's natural like an erythritol or xylitol. Make sure your dogs don't eat it if it's xylitol. Some people use monk fruit. The book's still out on a lot of these, but I think, those ones that are derived from plant-based sources that are the sugar alcohols in small amounts, some people don't react to them pretty well. The erythritol seems pretty good, but, when you said I love sweets, we're all wired to love sweet because sweet in our evolutionary history, that means energy. It means quick energy. And so sweet things, we are literally wired to love sweet things, but we're also wired to love fatty things. And the sweet stuff, it messes up your hormones, your ghrelin and your leptin, so it messes up your hunger and your satiety, so that you eat more. It registers differently as calories, so you overeat. But when you eat fat, your body is so well designed to metabolize and use that fat and recognize it as a healthy food that you're in a much better state, and you need much less of that craving for sugar. But everybody that I've realized, everybody kind of has their kryptonite that they have to be careful for. Sugar is probably the biggest one. For me, it's wine. I love drinking wine. I gave up drinking beer. So stopping at one or two glasses is sometimes a bit tricky, especially if you're at a friend's place for dinner or something like that. But that recognizing what your triggers are is something we address in BioDiet as well. We talk a lot about the psychology of eating better and sustainability, and I even have some references from some sports psychologists that talk about being a champion in your own life and how you stick with the plan, which is what people need to do. Please, if there's one thing I would encourage everyone to do is get sugar out of your life and reduce your need for sweet things, because that, I think, is one of the leading root causes of the chronic disease right now is our obsession with sweet.
So let's talk more detail about this, because this interests me a lot. So stevia, okay? So you know what that is, obviously.
Yeah, stevia is it's a plant-derived sweetener. Remember, most of these chemicals are because they taste these ways to us because they're things that we eat. So they're derived from plant-based products. So stevia is. What are your thoughts on stevia, Tracy? I'd be interested to hear.
Okay, so personally, I love coffee, and I put just a few drops of stevia in it, and MCT oil and cinnamon, because cinnamon's a prebiotic, so it's good for your gut. It's also good for your metabolism. And then I go and I hit the gym and I drink the coffee on the way. Because I do strength training and I'm really busy on the go a lot, and I oftentimes don't want to stop and eat, I'll make a protein shake with coconut milk, cinnamon, water, and I have a protein powder it's just 3 ingredients. It's hydrolyzed beef protein, stevia, and cocoa powder. And I whip that up and I just keep it with me so that when I get a hunger pain, like usually I don't have it until around noonish, but then I have something. And so I feel like that protein powder is a saving grace for me sometimes, because if I want something that's kind of chocolatey sweet, I go to that. But my curiosity is, I've heard mixed reviews on this, is if it raises insulin.
Yeah, and probably to some degree. Some of the sweeteners do have that effect. I think monk fruit and maltitol in particular. So, what you're saying is there's so many interesting things in that, Tracy. First of all, you mentioned earlier that you like to work out while you're fasting. That's very smart. The science seems to indicate that working out, you do your fast the next day, you go and do your workout, and then you eat. Having that coffee is fine. If you're going to use stevia to address that, be sure to use an organic stevia, because the ones that aren't organic, the solvents they use to extract the stevia from the plant have pretty serious health consequences. So if you're using a lot of it, you for sure want to use an organic stevia. If as long as you're using things in small amounts, your body can deal with it. The problem is, can you do that in small amounts, or are you going to just start, eating lots of sweet stuff sweetened with stevia? So I use all kinds of different ones. I experiment with all of them. But if I can for a second, just talk about your shake too. By the way, the cinnamon and is great. It's also an anti-inflammatory. And ketogenic diets are anti-inflammatory as well, as I explained. In BioDiet, I have this this very simple model for chronic disease, Tracy, that I think your listeners will appreciate. There's three things that are at the fundamental root cause of chronic disease. It's insulin resistance. So I'm glad you mentioned insulin. It's obesity, and it's inflammation. And those three things, I call them the axis of illness. Do you remember George Bush and his axis of evil? Well, this is the axis of illness, those three things. And the problem is high carb diets aggravate all of those, and they all make each other worse in this kind of vicious circle. So if you just keep eating carbohydrate, you're going to make all of those worse. If you take the carbohydrate out, all those things resolve, and your risk for chronic disease, or the disease, if you have it, resolves itself really quickly. So going back now to your discussion of the shake, right after the and Jeff Woolley's actually done some great work on this stuff. Right after the workout is best. So you fast, go to the gym, do your workout, come home, and then have some high protein and high fat, but high protein shake is great. The one you described is pretty good. I put cream. I put some kefir in mine as well, because I like the probiotic effect of the kefir. And I do use protein powders. Now the protein powders, there's a lot of information on that, but if you're interested, after a workout, you probably want, if people are okay with soy, some people have problems with soy, but about 25% soy, about 25% whey, and about 50% casein, which is from the whey and the casein are from milk, and milk is about 80% casein. And that seems to be the magic formula, 25% soy, 25% whey, and 50% casein in your protein powder. But if you're using like natural protein powders from animal products, that's perfect anyway, because we are what we eat. So, and we're not plants, even though I eat mostly plants, but if you're eating animal-based proteins, that's going to be fantastic, and the perfect after workout treat.
Well, I just don't do dairy. So that's why I do the beef protein. Yep. Because I do have a casein sensitivity. And so I try to avoid dairy most of the time, but I'm a cheese, I just love cheese. And so I most of the time don't. Like even when I do yogurt, I found a almond milk yogurt that's high fat, very, very low carb, like 1 gram of carbs. And that is what I would do for like a yogurt type dish.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. It sounds great. So it's not a lactose intolerance. It's a casein sensitivity that you have? Yeah. And lots of people, there's a gene that allows you to metabolize lactose. And a lot of people, that gene turns off as they become adults. So they become a little intolerant. So that would be mostly milk, because it's much higher in lactose, which is, of course, the sugar in milk. But if you drink cream, I use full fat cream, like full fat heavy cream. There's no sugar in that, but it's funny, it tastes sweet. So that might work for you. But if it's a casein issue, you want to avoid that particular form of protein in your diet for sure. And lots of people are, frankly. So it's one of the things about this is you do have to experiment. You've talked about this a lot on your shows, is people have to experiment themselves. Once they get through the initial what we call a bioadaptation phase in BioDiet, once you get through that, what you're going to be doing is playing around with things that work and don't work for you, and experimenting with foods and seeing how your digestive system responds. But sometimes you have to give it a little while. But by the end of about 12 weeks, you should have things pretty much sorted out. And for your workout routine, as a kinesiologist, looking at your workout, it sounds like you're doing exactly the right thing for that, which is why you're having such great performance in the gym.
Well, thank you. So I have a question. I want to kind of circle back on something that I forgot to ask you about when you mentioned it. But you said that when you started keto, you got a really big bout of the keto flu.
Yeah, it was. I felt like I had the flu. I felt like I ached and hurt and had headaches and dizziness, and ketone breath and stomach upset. And I felt like I didn't want to get out of bed.
So how would you recommend, knowing what you know now, how would you recommend somebody avoiding that?
That's a great question too, because one of the things that we've done with BioDiet, and again, you can go, we have a website, biodiet.org, and you can go and have a look at the book and see how it's set up. But one of the things we've done is we have actually 5 steps to it. And the first 2 steps are just introducing you gently to the ketogenic lifestyle and ketogenic foods, and that before you go hardcore and cut carbohydrates out of your diet as much as possible. And what I've learned in my clinical experience is this is much better at getting people to stay with and sustain a ketogenic diet. So the first stage is really, I call it bioassessment. You actually do a lot of the measurements that you should do before you engage in a ketogenic diet, so that you can figure out later. You have to have a baseline to compare it to, so you can figure out later if it's working and what's working for you. The second phase, though, called biopreparation, what this does is it asks you to give up alcohol and give up sugar, but stay with the other high carb foods for a while. To just get rid of some of those sugar cravings and to try and introduce your body to more fat as opposed to sugar. And then we also, I'm glad you mentioned MCT oils. I've found that introducing MCT oil to people during this phase is really beneficial because it's getting your body used to having these ketones. And that's one very important step, is this biopreparation step. So in my experience, people that do that are much more successful in adapting a ketogenic diet. And then in the actual adaptation phase, where you cut carbohydrates altogether, really, really important to get the salts right. And this is something that I didn't know that much about when I did it, but I learned about later. When I'm talking about salts, we're talking about like calcium, especially magnesium, calcium, but even sodium and potassium. Only about 3% of American adults get the amount of potassium they need in their diet on a daily basis. And so you need to make sure that if you're on a ketogenic diet, you need to actually increase the amount of salt you eat. So that's one of the things. So salty broth is a good thing that helps people through that keto flu. Even if you feel like you don't want to drink it, if you're feeling kind of upset stomach, the last thing you really want is like a salty broth, but it really will make you feel better. So 2 or 3 cups a day, sometimes that's all that people need. But I'm also a believer in magnesium supplementation during that bioadaptation phase. So all of those things, slowly going into it over a period of a couple of weeks before you go sort of hardcore into the adaptation phase. And then during the adaptation phase, make sure you get lots of fluid and make sure you get lots of salts. If you don't have to worry about salt on a ketogenic diet. In fact, some of the recommendations for these low salt diets may be causing more harm than good. If your diet is a ketogenic diet, your kidneys will sort it out. If you have too much of any of salt, any calcium, magnesium, it'll sort it out and you'll excrete it. If you're worried about too much calcium, you can have a little bit of lemon or lime with water, and that will absorb prevent any excess calcium from building up in your blood. And don't take too much. Like, anytime I'm very careful when I make recommendations to people, because sometimes when you say, well, this is good for you, people just think, well, if that's good, then twice as much is good, and 10 times as much be even better. So,
yeah. So
everything has to be kept within a range. So if you do all of those things, you'll still experience a period of bioadaptation, which is one of the reasons why it's very important to have physician oversight to make sure it's not something else. The other reason for physician oversight, of course, is if you are on any medication, and about half of American adults are on some medication, then you'll probably need to reduce that medication, say for hypertension or for high blood sugar, and you need to have your physician aware of that so that they can recommend the concomitant reduction of those medications while you're adapting. So, and that's very, very important. If there's one phase during, and I hate it, Tracy, when I hear this. Well, ketogenic diets are dangerous because of the keto flu. They're dangerous if you're not doing it right. And not doing it right is just getting your information on the internet and doing it on your own. That's not doing it right. Doing it right is getting your physician involved, but also if you can find one, is finding a nutritional counselor that understands ketogenic diets that can help you manage all of those side effects. And all of those things taken together, and it'll be a much easier ride for it. And most people, it's about a 2-week period that's kind of uncomfortable, but then it's kind of like working out. It doesn't always feel good when you work out, but you feel so great at the end of it.
Yeah.
And with a keto adaptation, you might feel kind of crappy for a couple of weeks, but I guarantee you 100% of all the people I've counseled, and it's not in the thousands like Eric Westman has done at Duke, but it's in the hundreds. Every single one of them says, I just feel great. I feel great now that I've gotten, carbs out of my life, and I'm now eating lots of fat. And I think I'm sure you've heard that same story over and over again as well.
So, okay, so I have two more questions three before we end, okay?
Sure.
So the first one is, how do you recommend people getting potassium? Because I know that potassium supplementation is not easy.
Yeah, it's tough, and they're fairly low doses. So just look for foods that are high in potassium. Nuts are really good. I'm a big fan of nuts. Again, probably I would say nuts and dairy probably provide about maybe half my calories on a day. And you got to make sure there are some nuts like cashews that are pretty high in carbs, and almonds are good, but go easy on those. But there's lots of potassium in nuts, and then there's some other vegetables that are pretty good. But generally, again, if we are what we eat. So if you're eating animal products, and by the way, you can be vegetarian and be ketogenic. That's one of the myths out there. You can even be vegan and ketogenic. It's a little bit more tricky, and I don't know why you would want to if you've chosen that path. But animal stuff is going to have the potassium that you need. So whatever, chicken, meat, fish, all of that. And then there are some good supplements as well. Some of the BHB, the beta hydroxybutyrate, that's the main ketone. Those supplements, exogenous ketones, they'll have a fair bit of potassium in them too.
Tastes like poop though. They're so disgusting.
I wish they could get the taste right. And then again, they tend to use sucralose or something cheap to sweeten it with. And yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right. They don't always taste nice. That's actually, partly how Gatorade came to be from, University of Florida Gators was rebalancing salts after workouts. So, in a pinch, you can even, get some, sugar-free Gatorade or one of those rehydrator type things. Vega products, they have some pretty good products for rehydration as well. So, but, diet first and then supplements.
Yeah, I usually say like spinach, avocados, things like that, because I've never seen a potassium supplement higher than 99 milligrams per capsule, and then you're going to have 10 of them a day, and that just makes me gag. So
yeah, I wouldn't try and get all of it from those capsules. Yeah, that's not going to work. You're right. You need to get it from your diet, and it's the balance of sodium and potassium, but that's important. So. Yeah, diet first. You're right, Tracy. That's the way to go.
So I do a teaspoon of, there's a resource I always recommend people to do, but I haven't talked about it for a while. It's whfoods.org, where if you are looking to what's high in potassium, you can go on there and look. Anyways, okay, so I always do a teaspoon of salt in the morning with lemon water. So it's I learned this from Luis Villasenor about 3 years ago. And so I drink a 16-ounce glass of water. When there's about an inch left, I add a squeeze of half a lemon and a teaspoon of a high-quality salt and shoot that down as my electrolyte shot. And I seriously notice a difference in the gym if I don't have it.
Oh, I'm sure you would. Yeah, the hydration's good as well, but I'm sure you would. I'm just curious, Tracy, as to why you do the salty bit at the end. I might be inclined to do it at the beginning and then kind of flush it down with some more dilute solution. But if it works for you,
I don't know. That's just what he taught me to do. I did one of his boot camps back in I think 2015, and that's what he said to do. So, or maybe 2016. So, but it's fine because I don't want to drink a whole bunch of salt water. So I just add, he says to do it this way and I do it, and then I drink more water after that, so I flush it down a little bit. So the last thing I want to ask you about is you said you love wine.
I do.
Okay. So what?
Guilty.
Well, I live in wine country, so I'm guilty too. So what kind of wine do you like, Dave?
Whites and reds. My personal preference. I really like Viognier for a white, or I drink some Pinot Grigio too for reds. I like the Pinot Noirs. We just came from, Oregon, and they have some beautiful Pinot Noirs there. But when I'm drinking wines, I only drink dry wines. I don't want anything. So even if it's a Riesling, I'll only a dry Riesling. And they'll have between 4 and 6 grams of carbs. So a glass or two a day is going to be fine. Your body will metabolize that. And in fact, that alcohol in the wine actually does help to moderate your blood sugar and improve your insulin sensitivity as well. So as long as there's no alcoholism in the family, or you're not operating a motor vehicle or whatever, having a glass of wine or two a day, probably one for women because they're a little smaller usually, and 2 for men is actually quite a healthy thing to do. Fermentation is a good thing. So one of the ones, like we do a lot of experimenting on ourselves to see what causes people to reduce their ketone production and so on. And for some reason, Scotch is pretty good. I don't drink Scotch. I'll have like one a year at Christmas, but Scotch doesn't seem to have any effect on ketosis whatsoever. What does have an effect are beers, and there are some low carb beers, but they're I have to say they're pretty dreadful tasting. You're not going to get a really nice malty ale without a ton of carbs, and that's going to knock you out of ketosis. So I had to say goodbye to beer. I have a Guinness on my birthday once a year. Actually, Guinness is pretty good. For some reason, it doesn't knock me out of ketosis if I just have one. But yeah, we drink wine every night, my wife and I, and we really enjoy it. And you need to enjoy your food, and that's one of our great pleasures. And the trick, of course, because it's got alcohol that affects your judgment, is being able to stop at a glass or two. And sometimes I confess I've broken that rule, and I get knocked out of ketosis, and I feel it the next day.
Yeah, well, you know what? To me, it's like it's just a day. And like I went to the movies with my mom for Mother's Day, and I had some popcorn. But you know what? It was just one thing. So I was back in ketosis right away. So have you heard of dry farm wines?
Yes, I have. In fact, there's a couple. We had a conference at Ohio State University, a global conference on ketogenic therapies, and they were one of the sponsors. So they had some very, very low, low carb wines, and they were pretty good. They were pretty good.
Yeah. So what I learned is I had Todd, the owner of Dry Farms, I had him on the show, and I learned a lot about like all the chemicals that they put in wines traditionally, and the higher sugar and the higher alcohol. And I've had their wines, like I've bought, cases of their wines before, which they're amazing. And what I realized is most of them are from Europe. And so at Trader Joe's, you can get European wines as well.
Yeah, and I was just at Trader Joe's yesterday, but I didn't do the wine section. I did the dairy sectional only because we were at our limit going back into Canada as to how much wine.
Oh.
But yeah, if you are going to buy wine, for sure, talk to the wine merchant and be sure you're getting very dry wines, and then you'll be okay.
Yeah, I love the European wines. I don't know what the rules are in Canada, but he scared me when he talked about all the chemicals in wine and stuff.
There are a lot of, it's a pretty complicated business, that one, so you do have to be careful.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, Dave, so how can our listeners find you and all your amazing things that you're working on?
Yeah, well, the easiest way is to go to biodiet.org, not .com, but .org. So BioDiet, BIODIET .org, and you can have a look at the book. There's also some resources you can access there from the book. We're just building that site right now, so it's not quite finished, but it's certainly available to you now. And you can order our book, BioDiet, straight from the website at your local online bookstore, and it's also available in stores throughout America. And then if I could ask Tracy, if people do, if they do buy the book, especially if it's online like on Amazon, if they would be so kind as to provide a review so that we know what they liked about the book, that would be great. And then we're also going to put on our website an opportunity for people to provide comments and feedback and testimonials on our website as well. So that's the best place, is biodiet.org, and you can get a hold of me at dave@biodiet.org. Or you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I think on Facebook I'm Dave Harper. On LinkedIn I'm David G. Harper. And then there's a few I did a TED Talk a while back. If you look at David G. Harper and TED Talk, you'll find one on my thoughts about our policies on food in Canada. Hopefully you'll be hearing more from me and seeing more of me in the next year or two as we try and spread the good word about ketogenic diets and what I call, actually Stephen Finney coined the term, well-formulated ketogenic diet. These are the healthy, sustainable forms that provide all your nutrition. So BioDiet is the book, and it's a well-formulated ketogenic diet.
Awesome. And it is a great book, you guys. You got to check it out. I really like the way it's written. It's easy to read. It's engaging. It's laid out wonderfully. So it's not like the boring layout. I really recommend checking it out. So.
And what do you, if I can just ask you to finish, what do you think of the cover?
I love it. It has an egg on it, and that's, the whole start of life. I have chickens, so I'm a big fan of eggs. Oh my gosh, you know what I have waiting in my refrigerator for me? A double yolk keto egg.
There you go. A double yolk keto egg is going to be fantastic. And, it is kind of nature's food, but I so many of the books are, they're covered with food and stuff. It's complicated. I wanted to keep it kind of clean and simple, and have that egg on there as the icon for a ketogenic diet. Because what I'm a little bit concerned about is people think of keto, they think of bacon and eggs all the time. And sure, you can eat bacon and eggs, but it's more than that. But an egg is, if there's nature's perfect food for an animal, it's an egg, because everything in a chicken is within that egg. It doesn't eat anything while it's in there, and there's no carbs in there at all. And somehow you get a perfectly formed chicken with the same 200 tissue types we have. So that's nature's perfect food in my mind, and that's why it's on the cover of BioDiet.
Absolutely, I agree. It is nature's, and it's an inexpensive form of protein for people who think keto is so expensive. I mean, eggs are, I think, the least expensive form of a complete protein that you can eat. And with the choline in the egg yolk, it's just so healing for your body.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I love the cover. I love everything about it. So I'm really excited for you, and I love you sharing your wisdom. I'm going to be stalking you now.
You may stalk me, friend me, and whatever you like. I really appreciate your show. You do great work, and you're really helping the cause as we try and change public policy to have people recognize ketogenic diets as a very healthy alternative to the standard Western diet. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate you and what you're doing, like you said, to support our cause and heal people.
Great. I was very, very happy to be here. It's a pleasure and nice to chat with you and get to know you a little better too, Tracy. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this episode, go out and check out his book on Amazon, BioDiet. It's a great little cover with an egg on it, as you heard in the show. And if you like the book, please go ahead and give him a review on Amazon. That helps these books get in front of more eyeballs and more people can read and understand and apply the keto lifestyle to their day. If you have any guests that you think would be wonderful for the show, including yourself, hint, hint, please email me at tracy@highenergygirl.com. That's Tracy with 2 E's at highenergygirl.com. Okay, everyone, go out and make it a great day. This podcast contains the opinion and thoughts of its host and guests. It is intended to provide helpful and informative material on the subjects covered. All statements made on the podcast have not been evaluated by the FDA and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. If the listener requires professional assistance or advice, please contact your personal medical doctor. Both host and guest specifically disclaim any responsibility for any liability, loss, or risk, personal or otherwise, which is incurred as a consequence directly or indirectly of the use and application of any of the contents of these episodes. Like I said, this is my opinion and I could be wrong.